Global warming is the greatest threat that our planet faces today. We live on a busy and rapidly changing planet. Over time, we have relied on burning fossil fuels to maintain certain comforts in our lives. But we also rely on technology. Computers are at the heart of the technological world, but on their own, there are limits to what they can do. They need sensors to help them feel the world around them. Two people from Cambridge have come up with one idea to merge computers with sensors to help them understand the environment around them.
So we've both been suffering from health problems which have been contributed to by air pollution in the area. And because we work with pies and electronics anyway, we looked into how we could monitor that, and we found you can buy these nifty little devices online. This is a PMS 5003, which monitors particulate matter.
And so we took one and we integrated it with a little Raspberry Pi Zero and a little display there. You can see inside there's the particulate sensor. There's a Raspberry Pi there. So Raspberry Pis are little computers. You can buy them very cheaply. This one is a Pi Zero, which costs less than £10. And you use them to make electronic projects, to learn to program. They have these little pins here. You can connect them to all sorts of different devices. I use them to connect to an air quality monitor. You can connect little displays to them, little switches, have little buzzers going off. They're great for all sorts of projects to teach about computers, really, and they're very cheap and versatile. So after we built the device, we had it running. We checked it against known good air quality levels and made sure it was reading the same thing. We took it on the tube in London. We discovered on the Victoria line the pollution levels are 6 times the EU legal maximum. That's quite concerning.
Microcomputers and sensors can do more than just monitor air pollution. In Norfolk, they are helping with a serious problem facing bees. Bees across the planet are suffering huge losses to their hives due to a large number of threats. Beekeepers Harry and Michael have devised a plan to help save their bees.
So the centerpiece of our technological infrastructure really is the Raspberry Pi. So the Pi is inside an enclosure in the hive, connected to a number of sensors recording the data that we're interested in. So the Pi, we've got connected to a temperature sensor, which is going to give us a live reading. So right now we're sampling that every 60 seconds along with humidity. On top of that, we've also got we're using at the moment a USB microphone to record the audio of the bees. And that's where we really feel that we can find changes in the resonance of the bees, the frequencies at which they're buzzing, that may indicate particular hive events happening. So in order to do that, we've engineered some infrastructure into the hive that allows us to record those data, which we then send and record in a database.
Bees hate spaces, and so if you introduce a foreign object inside a hive or inside the cluster of bees, their first instinct is to try and seal off any gaps and cover it up. And they do this with a resiny material called propolis. So as a compromise, what we've done is put the technology and the microphone on a board above the brood, that is the collection of bees, with a mesh in between so that the humidity and the temperature should get through and as much of the noise as possible, but it will at least stop the microphone from being blocked up and hopefully last much longer.
So one of our prerogatives is to keep the cost of the project as basically the same as a jar of honey. So the economic prerogative is that we need to be able to fund for all of the hives that we're doing, which may be on the order of 20, 30 to 50 hives. So we'd like to take all these data, and as we get close to the summer, the sort of the peak intervention time for beekeeping, we'd like to see as much as we can what we can learn from the data that we're collecting, what we can learn by analysing frequencies in the audio, and in the longer term move to whether we can do a predictive effort using statistical machine learning or artificial intelligence as to what's happening in the hive.
Change over time is one of the most important trends to show something may be going wrong. It is what we, as citizens, do with that information that can help save our planet. A versatile add-on for the Raspberry Pi can be used to record such observational changes. A Raspberry Pi camera. Joe Johnson is about to finish school and go to university to study engineering. But he is also an avid birdwatcher.
I realised there's been a huge decline in the birds in my garden, or at least I thought there was, so I thought I'd investigate it myself. I made this. It's a Pi camera attached to a Pi and a battery bank in my waterproofed lunchbox. To make it, I had to cut holes in this lunchbox, and then it cracked, so I burned it back together, but that's all good, it works. To detect the birds in the videos I film, I've written lots of software which can detect motion in the frames and see where the birds are, so I don't have to sift through hours of footage. Here's one of the cameras I've set up. It uses rubber bands and clips to mount to the tree, so I can easily adjust it and point it at the bird feeder, which is positioned over here. Through the camera, I've seen loads of birds in my garden, and it's been really great to see what birds like the bird feeder that I've set up. So here's the camera. If I take the case off, you can see we've got a camera module here connected to a Pi 0W. So this lets me view it wirelessly from my phone or my computer inside without having to go outside and look at the camera. And the camera module here just connects to it and works like any webcam.
It may look unconventional, but technology doesn't have to look smart to be effective.
So here's some of the pictures from the cameras. And you can see here, we've got a blue tit with its distinctive yellow chest and blue body. And you can see he's perched on the branch here. And in the next frame, taken just a couple seconds later, you can see he's perched on the feeder having a snack. So this is encouraging to see, as we can see that the birds are using the feeder and eating from it. And here we see the same story with a robin. And you can see here he's eating from it, and he's also spending time in the tree. So this picture here was taken on another day from a different Pi camera at a different angle. And you can see it's become more than just a food source. It's a full habitat for them. And here, this furthers it by showing that the robins are spending time in the garden and not just in the tree. So the whole garden has become their habitat, which is really encouraging to see. It's been interesting as I've also had to sift through lots of cat photos, since the motion detectors are picking up my cat as she climbs through the tree, as well as all the birds. It's really encouraging to see the number of birds that have actually been in my garden, especially since adding bird feeders to it. I think it's definitely made me realise how much of an impact adding a food source can provide to your garden. Through this, I've determined that there's still plenty of robins and blue tits in my garden, but there's hardly any house sparrows, which is a real surprise because a couple of years ago, there were hundreds of them around here. So I'm not really sure what's happened with that. It's definitely something for concern.
Remote sensing like Joe's can warn us of the disappearance of birds like house sparrows in time for us to intervene. However, there are many animals that live in areas that are remote or difficult to access. Conservationists in London are using the Raspberry Pi to gain a better insight into the world of sea turtles.
So currently a lot of technology that's used in conservation is very expensive and difficult to access for a lot of users. So we wanted to bring down the cost of some of the technologies being used and adopt open source designs and principles to get these tools into the hands of people who really needed them. We have both a camera tag and a GPS tag. So firstly, the camera tag is here. So this can be used on marine wildlife to film what they get up to under the water. So you can look at where an animal's going, how it's interacting with other animals. So we actually found that in 27% of the video footage we took, they were coming into contact with plastics, and we could see the kind of plastics those were and potentially the location where those were found. The tag consists of a Raspberry Pi camera inside with batteries, and then it's all housed within an enclosure that can survive up to depths of 500 metres for diving species. We also have a GPS tag, which you can see here. This one's actually been deployed on a sea turtle, so you can see the little scratches where it's scratched on rocks. And within this tag, we would have a GPS board. This is the antenna, which allows the tag to get the GPS locations. So we've undertaken tagging work in Cyprus, in Guinea-Bissau and in Principe Island off the west coast of Africa. Female green sea turtles come up to the beach to lay their nests at night. So we wait till it gets dark, we'll go down to the beach and we'll wait there until they come out of the sea. So we have to wait until they've found a good spot, and they've dug their nest, and then it's actually when they're laying their eggs that we tag them because they go into a kind of trance-like state. So we mount these tags to a turtle shell using a completely harmless process which involves fiberglass cloth and a type of glue called epoxy. We either physically retrieve that tag, so for example when a turtle comes back to a beach to nest, or that attachment will degrade over time naturally as well, and the tag will eventually fall off. Our tagging work has been focused on marine sea turtles, but we're looking at expanding this out to tag different species. So we're currently working on a crocodile tag, and we're also looking at decreasing the size of our tag so that it can be used on smaller species, and particularly on things like birds.
Raspberry Pis help scientists gain a better understanding of animal behaviours and their habitats, which can be difficult to access. Some environments, however, cannot provide us with useful information without an initial visit. Halfway across the world in Peru, we find another deployment of Raspberry Pis.
The project came about in response to better understanding the risks of glacial hazards in mountain communities in Peru in particular. As the Quelccaya ice cap recedes, large lakes will now form in front of the active ice. There's now a very real threat that this active ice will carve into these large lakes, causing them to overspill and flood downstream communities. So we needed to create a cheap and efficient system that could predict the iceberg carving before it actually happened, so we could warn downstream communities that a flood might be on the way. Positioned around the front of our glacier, we've got 30 Raspberry Pi Zero cameras. Now, on top of the Raspberry Pi Zero, we've got an RTC hat, which just means a clock that turns the Pi on every 2 hours so that the Pi can capture an image, transmit it over a Wi-Fi station that we've also set up at the glacier. Then, back in Leeds, we can create a 3D model from those 2D images that we capture at the glacier. So, for example, on a 2-hour period, we could spot icebergs leaning ever so slightly forward before they actually carve and splash into the lake. If these icebergs are over a particular threshold in terms of size or volume, then we can warn downstream communities that a large splash might be on the way that could overtop the glacial lake and cause floods downstream. Some of the main challenges that we had to overcome in our projects were largely due to the natural environments that we are in. So the high Andes are 5,500 metres above sea level, and there are no roads near our study site. So we needed equipment that was light enough for us to physically carry at high altitude. Then we've also got temperatures at night that go down to -10, so we needed electronics that could operate at this temperature. And we're also entering into the rainy season in Peru, so we needed electronics that were small enough to be put into weatherproof casing. Additionally, during this rainy season, there can be very little sunlight because there's very thick cloud layers. So we needed batteries made out of lead acid that were okay down to -10, and then large solar panels on each of the 30 cameras that could keep the batteries charged enough to ensure that the Raspberry Pis could draw from them for days at a time. At the moment, this is just a proof of concept study. We chose our lake based on the fact that the ice around it is particularly active, not really the threat of flooding downstream to the communities. However, since we've started deploying this in the region, a glacial community nearby in Chikon to the west of Kelkaya have expressed interest, and we could be deploying it there if we can raise enough funds. Once we've proved the concept though, this can be deployed anywhere around the world. There are millions of people all around the world living under the threat of glacial hazards, and this system really could predict against flooding events that could cause unnecessary deaths or economic losses.
Monitoring a glacier halfway across the world is impressive. But the Raspberry Pi can do more still. In the United States, a team of robot enthusiasts are working on a project that may help improve crop yields to feed the world.
We are the creators of FarmaidBot. I'm Victor.
My name is Alex. I'm Dave.
I'm Sohaib.
The FarmaidBot was born about a year ago when a group of us came together and formed a team for the ARM Autonomous Robot Challenge. The challenge was to build an autonomous robot that would have significant social impact. So one of our teammates, Saheb, was doing his part of research, found out about a community where communities in parts of Africa were losing large crops of food due to late disease detection. So had the disease been detected sooner, many of the crops could have been saved. And that's where the FarmaidBot was born. Today, it's able to go around greenhouses autonomously and look for diseased plants. Once the diseased plant is detected, the grower is notified, and the crop can hopefully be saved.
So this robot was designed to drive around the greenhouse. So the first thing we do is we give the robot a set of coordinates that we want it to go to inside of the greenhouse. And after that, it has to be able to localize itself. So it has to know where it is inside of the greenhouse. So to do this, we put these fiducial markers all around the greenhouse, and then we pre-program into the software where the coordinates of all of these landmarks are inside the greenhouse. So the robot has a Raspberry Pi and a USB camera on it. And so as the robot is driving around, if it detects one of these landmarks, then it can calculate where it is inside the greenhouse. So once the robot gets to its desired waypoint, then we give it another waypoint, and we repeat this process until it covers the entire greenhouse.
FarmAid detects diseases by converting images and labels into numbers. Currently, we can identify blight, and we can identify powdery mildew. Powdery mildew shows up as white dots on the top of a leaf, and blight can be identified based on the color.
So where we want to go next with FarmaidBot is firstly to stay in this infrastructure that we're in the ecosystem with Arduinos and Raspberry Pis, because that makes it affordable and accessible to everyone. And then secondly, we want to engage a little bit more with the public, partially because we need the data and partially because we want to encourage additional ideas and people to go off and do their own variations and interpretations of what we've done. And for that, we need the data from diseased plants or other plants in people's gardens, hopefully if they can label what the disease might be. But we use that to build the machine learning, the image classification, and the disease detection system. It's trained by virtue of what it's seen, so the more data we have, the better that it gets. And we'll be putting up a portal so that everyone can access that data soon.
This emerging technology can empower people and give them a voice. From preventing possible extinctions, public health risks, catastrophic floods, and famine, the answer may just lie at the touch of a button.